It is Cash Friday, and today we honor that notable American on the front of the $100 bill, the C note, Ben Franklin. And on Cash Friday, the goal is for you to favor local small business by paying cash as opposed to paying by plastic that comes with it, the flagellum, if you will, the long spermatozoa type tail at the end of it, the record of the transaction of credit. Cash has no tail. It satisfies the payment immediately, and there's no tax. There's no tapeworm tax on that local economy transaction. And this is David Toulis here at 92.7 FM and 95.3 FM HD4 high definition channel 4. Cash. We pay in cash, and that means since you don't have any in your billfold, you have to go to your bank or credit union. I always prefer credit unions. They operate on a cooperative, voluntarist theory. And you draw out big bills, right? Something that's going to shock you, that you have 250s in your billfold, or maybe 520s if you're thinking of spending it immediately. So spend cash, get that cash out of the bank and spend it today. That is Cash Friday, and we are celebrating that. Now, we have news, of course, about the elections and Bill Lee leading all the contenders for the Republican primary. So he's going to be the Republican nominee, or he is the Republican nominee for governor, and Carl Dean on the other side, and on down toward the local officials, local races. And I want to suggest a way of having this in perspective, this news in perspective. Some people are celebrating, others are weeping, perhaps, that Jonathan Mason, with his bleak attack ads against Esther Helton, didn't make it, weeping on his side, perhaps in the House race here in East Ridge. But there's a perspective to have on this, and I have firsthand evidence on two counts. Evidence, proof number one is a weeping woman this morning outside of the Panera restaurant in Hickson, where I spend Friday mornings thinking about you, my listener, what you need to hear about. And Caitlin DeFore is a young woman who is in the recruiting business. And she was arrested by a highway patrol trooper, and rather than being arrested, she assigned his pink citation for Sessions Court. And she was terrified by the whole encounter that I made photographs of, and about which I chatted with her afterwards, kind of explained to her what it all meant, and trying to console her to say, well, ma'am, this is not a prison offense or anything like that. This is likely to be held is really not much. But she was grievously affected by this. She was traumatized. She did not want to come in to eat anything. She had lost her appetite. And that woman's tears, at which she dabbed repeatedly in the 3 visits I had with her at the side of her car. I went out to chat with her once, and then again when she was still there, and then a third time just to see if she was okay. A wellness check, right? The David Toulis wellness check, offering encouraging words for her, tears in her eye. Now, there's a second proof of why perhaps the political races and elections matter not as much as we like to think, and that is the story of Malik Sanford. Malik Sanford is a man who is a very, very hardworking man. And in fact, he has moments after we chat with him this morning or this afternoon, he has a job interview for a second gig. He is a man, a hardworking soul, as I say, works for a phone company as an accounts expert. And on the 29th of July, on Sunday, he was arrested and jailed at 7:30 Sunday morning. Booked. He was arrested, booked, and then had to pay the bondsman, since he didn't have $2,000 to pay the bond himself. He had to write the bondsman fee, or pay the bondsman his fee to escape. And then he had to pay almost $200 more to get his car back. After an arrest at an intersection involving a Chattanooga police officer and then 2 cruisers with officers therein from East Ridge, Malik Sanford had is proof of the hardworking people we have here in Chattanooga. They are seeking prosperity and working hard. And why was he arrested? Well, Malik, what happened to you that morning? Why were you were at an intersection and suddenly you are under arrest? Tell the story, please.
All right. Thanks for having me on the show. Just to get straight to it. So, of course, I work 12-hour shifts at the phone company that I work for, and I was a little exhausted. And, of course, I ended up falling asleep at the red light. My vehicle was in park. I say around 6 o'clock in the morning. The officers were on the scene. Of course, they were waking me up. And once they woke me up and got my attention, they asked me for my driver's license and my insurance. And of course, I did provide the officers with my driver's license and my insurance. And of course, they came back to the car and said, hey, everything looks good. Everything is valid. But of course, I'm going to need you to step out of the car. So in a very respectful manner, I stepped out of the car and they told me to put my hands on the car and they searched me. They didn't find anything.
What was the cause for the search, Malik? What reason did they have to think you were armed or dangerous to them?
Maybe because of my skin color. I'm not too sure what the search was all about. But of course, in a respectful way, I just, abided about what they told me to do. And they didn't find anything. And then, of course, what happened next, they actually gave me like these tests for when they think someone may be drunk, which I wasn't drunk at all. I had no alcohol in my system. And of course, I did do the test,
What kind of test was it? Was it a blood test?
No, they didn't give me the blood test until they actually took me to jail. Now, the tests were, count my ABCs, count my numbers. I did all of that well. And then, of course, he still stated, hey, I suspect you may be under the influence. And of course, I told him I wasn't under the influence. Could I please have a breathalyzer test? And he immediately said, we don't have any breathalyzer tests on the scene. And I also responded back with, well, hey, there's 3 officers on the scene, 3 different police cars. I find that hard to believe that neither one of you guys have a breathalyzer test. And, he just pretty much denied of having it. And he said that I was going to jail.
And again, the accusation was we find you or we believe you are under the influence of alcohol.
Absolutely.
Or under the influence of something. Did the officers indicate what it was they presumed was the substance that you were under? Did they say drug or alcohol? Malik Sanford?
No, they didn't say alcohol or any other drug. They just stated that they believed that I was under the influence and I will be taken to jail where I would actually get a blood test once I get there. And I begged them over and over to please let me go to work because I have to be at work at 9 o'clock in the morning to work a 12-hour shift. I can have someone to actually come and get my vehicle with a valid driver's license and you can watch us pull off as I won't be behind the wheel. And of course, I was denied that as well. And I was just denied the breathalyzer test over and over because I asked for it at least 3 times.
Well, where do things stand now, Malik Sanford? You have a court date in city court in Chattanooga, or are you being taken to sessions court in the county?
I have a court date at the city of Chattanooga courthouse, of course, on August the 14th, actually.
Well, what are we to make of this encounter? Were you acting in good faith? Well, let me ask this. You mentioned that there was a test made upon you. What was the test about? How was it administered? And what were the results, if you know?
All right. Well, of course, the test was about me being falsely accused of being under the influence. And I actually asked how long would it take for the test results to come back. And I was told that it takes at least 48 hours for the test results to come back. So I didn't find out what the results were because I made bond that night. I was on a 6-hour hold. I'm in a 12-hour hold.
What's the 12-hour hold mean?
Anytime you actually get took into jail for a DUI, whether you were convicted or not, you will be on a 12-hour hold before you can actually be released, even if you made bond as soon as you got there.
Was a breath test administered in the arresting compound? Did you have a breath test at all?
No, I didn't have a breath test at all. I really feel I was refused a breath test on the scene because the officers could tell that I was not under the influence. However, since my skin is black, I believe that that's the reason why I was refused the breath test, because if I would have took the breath test, I would have passed it, and they knew I would have
You're
passed
suggesting that none of the arresting officers was an African American, Malik.
it. No, all three of them were Caucasian, and I want to make it very clear: I'm not a racist individual, but I can smell racism a mile away.
Well, let me ask about what analysts call the judicial-industrial complex, or the police-industrial complex. That is a large system of government. It needs people to bring into its system, and it seems that you are part of the oil that makes it all run. They need to have arrests, and there's a kind of a clamor for bodies to put through the court system effectively for it to justify itself. You have done nothing wrong, right? Did you injure anybody in this encounter? Was there anybody hurt as a result of your having fallen asleep in the intersection?
No, I had done nothing wrong. No one was hurt. My car was in park, so I must have just knew that I was actually exhausted, and maybe thinking that I was gonna be able to stay awake to make it home. I put my vehicle in park, and of course, I ended up falling asleep just from being exhausted, which I regret today because I'm going through a lot. Just because I fell asleep behind the wheel when I could have been easily given a break by getting written a citation, especially after my driver's license came back valid, and as my insurance.
Right. So those are two things which guarantee your status as a so-called driver or operator, and you pass the oral test and the standing straight, walking straight test from the officer, the game that the officer plays.
Absolutely.
And so there was not the benefit of the doubt being given, and you were taken off. But you said that this occurred before a work day. Do you think that your work you had a 12-hour day ahead of you? Now, why was it that you were so tired? How is it that your work days are stacked up, that you didn't have the wits to be awake behind the wheel that morning?
Well, of course, I actually worked a 12-hour shift on Saturday that morning from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I was a bit tired the night before I went to work because I was doing a good deed. I actually had to pick my brother up from work.
Your brother, Chris?
Yes, he's sitting behind me, and I was doing a good deed. And of course, I went to work. The next day, I worked 12-hour shift, and then
you have between those two work days, Malik. The phone company is pretty demanding. So the work shift ended Saturday at 9 p.m.
Right,
and you had to be back at work
at 9 o'clock in the morning the next day.
Okay, so you had a kind of a short window for eating, dealing with Malia, your daughter, 6 possibly, and Malik Jr., your son, age 10, and sleeping. Right, so you have kind of a small window for family and rest between two long shifts.
Absolutely.
So in other words, there is and you do have the weekend or week beginning shift, Saturday and Sunday, both days. That's part of your regimen.
Yes.
Well, okay. So now you have a court date, and let me ask about your defense. What kind of defense do you have, and do you plan to have a plea bargain in view? And I want to talk about the whole idea of a plea bargain, because that will tell me, is a plea bargain or a deal in view for you, Malik, or do you have other plans?
My plan is to actually get the whole charge wiped away, because I know for one that I will pass the test that they gave me as far as.
And you don't have the results, even though it's about a week later. You still haven't gotten the results.
Right, I don't have the results yet.
How tell my listener how you're supposed to get these. What's the practical step to getting results of a test like that? Where do you go?
Well, I'm not too sure, but I did ask the lady once I was released, would the evidence of my blood test be brought up in the court when I go on August the 14th? And she stated yes, that it would actually be brought up. And I'm going to pass with flying colors because I had no alcohol in my system.
Well, let me ask about the other evidence. What do you think the police video, did you ask the officer if he was running his video?
I did not ask the officer, was he running his video? However.
So you need to find out about that. How do you do that?
I'll actually be going down to the Chattanooga Attorney's office on Monday to actually try to retrieve that video.
This is David Toulis, and caller, you're live on the air with Malik Sanford, arrestee, and David Toulis.
Hi, Malik. You are entitled to what's called discovery immediately, which means you request any and all information that's going to be used against you, any and all evidence that's going to be against you, any and all people that are going to testify against you, including their phone numbers, to be able to cross-examine them and or depose them. You're entitled to that right now. On top of that, you're entitled to that blood work report and something called admissions and confessions, which means you just get a piece of paper and say, admit that I was not intoxicated. Admit that you did this. Admit that you did that. Admit. It's called admissions and confessions. They must respond in a specific amount of time and either admit it, deny it, or refuse to answer it. We can get a judge to compel them to answer it. So you need to look in the rules of court and find out how much time they have to respond. This is called discovery. You can't go to court blind. Every side has to know what the other side is doing.
Absolutely.
They can call surprise. So before you go to court, you have to have all their information. They have to have all your information. So I would start that as soon as today, to go for discovery and discover what they have that they think they're going to be able to use against you. And also, I would also ask for a grand jury indictment.
Well, what that means, though, would be that Mike needs to waive the Sessions Court because he'll be given a form in which he either accepts the jurisdiction of Sessions Court, which is it's an unofficial court.
Sessions Court is kangaroo court.
Yeah, it's not.
In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we call it the district justice, and the only purpose of that court is to get your argument. It's not a real court. You want to go to a court of record, and here's what it comes down to. If everyone fought the system, they would stop arresting innocent people. They wouldn't have time.
I agree.
But what they do is they charge you with 5 crimes, hoping you'll admit to one. And the one they always use, is resisting arrest. Stop resisting. Stop. Or disorderly conduct, which is absurd. Because to be disorderly, they have to define what is orderly. It's a scam. It's a money-making scam. The system wants everyone in it. White, black, rich, poor. They want you fingerprinted, photographed, and reporting to them.
Then the society will be safe, Mike, right?
Oh, yeah. Then it'll be safe under their hands. Fight them, tooth and nail.
Well, let me ask you this, though. So there's discovery. Question, Mike. Is there discovery in a criminal matter? I thought discovery applied only in civil matters.
Especially in criminal matters. Especially. Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to know everything the other side is doing.
So he has a right to get, Mike, you're saying he has a right to get, is it through open records or is it through the fact that he has that pink slip, which is his warrant and his citation? Can he, on the power of the citation?
Look in the rules of court, and it'll tell you specifically the time frame to ask for discovery. You have to.
Does he have to have a subpoena? Does he have to get a subpoena for discovery?
No, you don't need any of that. This is due course. In other words, if you hired a lawyer, your lawyer would do that. Okay. He would submit papers to the system. You know, they all belong to the bar, so they're all there to protect the interests of the state. So if you hire a lawyer, the only thing you're going to do is lose. That's all they can do is play bargain and lose. Same thing with a public prosecutor, which they call public defenders. So no, you have a right to it right now. Just look in the rules of court. It'll tell you how to proceed. I'll tell you the best thing to do. This is how I learned. Just go to the courthouse and look at some of the records and find out how they did. In other words, look at people in similar situations and find out what they filed and how they filed. It's all open records. David could probably help.
Well, let me ask you this. Does Malik, Mike, does Malik have to file an open records request to get the video, at least one video? There might be 3 video discs. No, because he's the defendant. Because he's the accused. Yeah, he's the moving party. He's not the moving party. He's the accused of the defendant. No, you have a right to that as a matter of discovery because you have an interest in the case. Now, if I wanted it, I would have to have an open records request. But you're directly involved with this. See, the 6th Amendment also states that you have a right to subpoena all witnesses, even if it's the president, so they can testify for you. You know, you have a lot of rights, man. Most people don't even understand. First thing is discovery. Discover what they have against you. Look at all that information. Typically, what both sides will do, they'll go for discovery, find out what each side has, and they sit in the room and go, okay, come on, you're not going to win this. You know you're not going to win this, so we're bringing it before a jury. Just drop it. And the prosecutor may say, well, we'll win 3 of the 5 charges. We'll knock it down to a misdemeanor. But you don't have a liar. It'll just be you and them. But definitely don't go to a kangaroo court. Take it to a real court. Ask for but Mike, it's scary to be indicted. To say, look, I'm going to waive this court, and have my case reviewed by the grand jury, that's scary, because what if they indict you? Then he has to post bond again. Mike, he can't afford that. He can't afford to post bond a second time.
That's what you got to do.
What?
I mean, come on. You can't tell me you can't find one juror member that's going to find you not guilty. You can't convince one person that you weren't guilty.
Okay, hang on. This is David Toulis.
First of all, I'm not going to take this to a jury.
Right, this won't get to a jury. This is David Toulis, and Mike, thank you much for calling. We're talking with Malik Sanford, and we're trying to evaluate election results here. Okay, the election results are not important, but what we're talking about here is important, because here your rights are at stake, and everybody who gets ground into the machinery has the same questions that Malik and I have about what to do. I would say, hang on.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
The latest election results, according to News Channel 9, showed Jim Coppinger won, County Mayor. Sheriff Jim Hammond won. David Sharp won County Commissioner against Joe Graham, a longtime commission member. Sharp's relationship with Unify Ed gave him a major boost. Mark Graffett won Register of Deeds. The THP began its annual inspection of school buses this week. Troopers inspect the buses from stern to stern, ensuring everything is shipshape. A yellow sticker on the bus's bumper indicates its last inspection date. And parasite lungworm infections have been reported here in Tennessee. Reports say rat lungworm can travel through